When you come to a meeting like this and you give talks, you're supposed to be an expert. So I'm definitely not an expert. I just happened to raise my hand, or maybe I didn't raise my hand. I got picked out to stand here, so here I am. But you know, it's fun, and I love this idea and this topic of what it means to be a Christian ophthalmologist, because I think there's a lot of stereotypes that we kind of have, and my goal is to challenge the stereotypes and have us seeking the Lord, and trying to say, hey, how can we make a difference for God's kingdom? But a couple caveats. One is this third of the room is my staff, some of my staff, and so I'm excited to have you guys here. And I know some of you guys know the Lord, some of you guys may be seeking, and some of you guys maybe don't. And so it really makes me nervous being here, because I can't just say stuff, because you guys see me at my best and at my worst while I'm operating. Well, patient's running behind or something, and something's not working. I'm like, rah, rah. So anyways, this the same me that's up here, so there's no glamour in being up here. They're going to keep me honest. But certainly glad you guys are here, and hopefully get to know each other and have a good time, because I wanted to give you guys perspective of the rest of ophthalmology, and I think it also gives me perspective of you guys just being here. And it's fun. I think, you know, ophthalmology has had a number of big losses this year. I think some pretty famous folks who have passed away. But, you know, I've kind of known some of the folks and some of their kids, and kind of seen how people around them have responded. I see, like on Carrying Bridge, a lot of last names that I recognize with first names that I don't, that are female typically, and I kind of assume it's the wife of somebody famous, right? And it's like, boy, after several decades in ophthalmology, it's those relationships we build. You know, it's not how many papers we publish, or in some sense, not even how many patients we've taken care of, but you know, whose lives have we influenced, whose lives have we been in, you know, what difference have we made? That I think ultimately, when our time comes up to meet the Lord, that's what really matters. So, anyways, I'm of course finished the talk about 5 minutes before I left my hotel this morning, and I don't have this big outline and grand whatever. It's just kind of I have some thoughts here, so hopefully I won't ramble too much. And if people have comments, I might try to pull people in for that. But I just kind of start with the standard disclosure, financial disclosure side, and then, but you know, this stuff's not really that important, because really my patients give me more money than any of those companies, but my real financial disclosure is that Jesus paid it all. So from a financial standpoint, you know, this is what matters. I don't have that slide in most of my talks. So, you know, I want to start with, I want to stand back when I'm told to stand in the light. I want to start with Psalm 139. I think that Psalm's kind of taken on new meaning for me in the last maybe a few years. And I know we a lot of times associate this Psalm with the pro-life movement, about being fearfully and wonderfully made. But really, if you read the entire Psalm, and when David talks about it, it's really about him. And he's looking into himself, he's introspecting. And he says, "O Lord, you have searched me and know me. You know when I sit down and when I rise up. You discern my thoughts from afar. You search out my path and my lying down, and are acquainted with all my ways. Even before a word is on my tongue, behold, Lord, you know it altogether. You hem me in behind and before, and lay your hand upon me. Such knowledge is too wonderful for me. It is high, I cannot attain it." And we do things, and especially when we get busy, we kind of do because we have to. And I don't know, for some of you guys, this meeting's just been probably average about 3 hours of sleep at these things. And it's like you're going from thing to thing to thing. It's like I'm just kind of going through the motions. And sometimes I try to pause, and this is like one of those moments. It's like, well, why am I doing all this? You know, and trying to get involved with industry and speaking and teaching, and why do I do this? You know, because like I said, I certainly don't need to do it from a financial standpoint. And is it a celebrity standpoint? Is it an attention standpoint? Is it an influence standpoint? Or what is it things that motivate us? As obviously we're all driven to get to where we're at. So kind of from an introspective standpoint, I think David, who had this remarkable ascent from being shepherd boy, who didn't even get called in when his brothers were called in, to being king of Israel, had this transition, which a lot of us, we were lowly medical students, you know, and now, you know, where a lot of us running practices, owning practices and stuff, is what motivates us, what drives us, and I think he kind of went through those thoughts. So anyways, that's been always a challenge, and the fact that even when I'm searching my own heart and saying, hey, what am I doing this for, or what motivates me, or what am I living for, I know that God knows me, and he's going to draw me, and ultimately is relying on him to do that. So I kind of break this down that wasn't supposed to like pop up all at once, but anyways, I didn't have enough time to go through this. So, you know, why do we need rethinking about Christian ophthalmologists? I mean, what is it? I try to do 3 M's. Is it meetings like this, prayer breakfast, or we want to call it, and it's always fun to get together and meet new folks. And kind of one of my thoughts is when I meet another believer, even if I never see him again, we'll see again, and there's more people to re-meet when we're in heaven. And hopefully my memory will be better when I'm in heaven than to, oh yeah, we have met, because I'm terrible with names and faces. But anyways, and the annual meeting, I went to one actually I haven't been in a while, but I went actually when I was in residency, and it was a really neat time. And so if you haven't gone, I encourage you to go. I'm actually going to be out of the country for this one, but hopefully in the future we'll be able to go there. Is to really have time, just hopefully even this morning having time to hang out with each other and talk. It's like, boy, I like to do this a lot more. And that's what the opportunity is at the annual meeting is we bring our family, we get to hang out, get to learn something, get to share about our faith. And then, so is it meetings? Is that what it means to be a Christian ophthalmologist? Is it missions? And I think, third world missions, Ghana, and that's fantastic. And I think there's always a need there. And I don't know if you guys saw the video for, I think CMDA put out for the doctor, I don't remember his name, who got Ebola. So the American doctor who caught Ebola and got better. Well, he was a believer, and he went it was one of the medical missions organizations, and actually David Stevens interviewed him for CMDA. He gave this, testimony about his experience with Ebola, and basically why he did it and what he went through. It was quite amazing, and the lives changed from that. So I think it's an amazing witness, and there's certainly a need there. But what I want to kind of suggest is that we don't want to categorize our existence as Christian ophthalmologists as I do everything the same, but I go on a mission trip once a year or whatever. And I think there's a great need for that, and I have great respect for folks who have given their life to that, but I don't want to be defined by that, because most of us, quite frankly, are in the U.S. most of the time. So we don't want to not be Christian ophthalmologists when we're not on a mission trip. And the other thing is, what about across town? What about across the street? What about across the hallway? Are we reaching out to those folks? I had to think of a third M, so I thought of mastery. So it's like, hey, one of the things that, and we're all high-achieving folks here, it's like, okay, and we're kind of probably perfectionists too, it's okay, if I do my profession very well, it'll be a good witness. If I do whatever very well. So mastery over patience with patient care, I'm a great surgeon, I do the right things, patients, honestly, they don't really know how good we are. They just know that, we're nice and they didn't wait in our waiting room, right? So, and then staff, and it's just, dealing with staff is, being, the good employer, being fair, being just, being all that stuff, that I try to be, and not losing my cool or composure. So is that what it means? He's a Christian, and that really makes me nervous sometimes. It's like, I'm just genuinely mad, and I want to swear, and I want to throw something, and it's like, and sometimes in the OR, something might come out, and it's like, and I feel bad about it. And it's like, okay, but, am I supposed to be perfect, or am I supposed to be broken, saved by Christ? So, it's a balance of all those things. And I think it is true to be all that, but I want to say it's more than just these pigeonholes or these categories that we may sometimes think, we think, oh, Christian ophthalmologist. So, kind of this scientific try to approach here is, okay, let's break it down. What's an ophthalmologist, and then what's a Christian? Maybe we'll try to put it together. So, ophthalmologist is the relatively easy definition, but not the easy route. So was it a year of kindergarten, 8 years of grade school, 4 years of high school, 4 years of college, 4 years of med school, internship, residency, fellowship. So what adds up to 26 years, I think, is typically what it is. And then medical licensing and board certification. So an ophthalmologist is relatively easy to define. Although sometimes, even with that, we still get confused with optometrists, opticians, obstetrics or something. So. Anyways, but that's an ophthalmologist. So we dilate things. So, what does it mean to be a Christian? And, a Christian is the Sunday school answer. I grew up in a Southern Baptist church where you ask Jesus into your heart. You pray the prayer, right? But I always kind of wondered, I was the kid that says, okay, what happens how does he physically get into my heart? I'm sure a lot of us kind of ask that question. So what does it mean? And it was also when I give some money to Jesus, I put my quarter in the offering plate. It's like, how does that get to Jesus? I didn't quite figure that out. I realize it's mostly HR and facilities, but that's an important part of the ministry. So you can have the theological answer, John 3:16. Obviously the Roman road. You can get real theological. That's what college is all about. Calvinism, Arminianism. You know how hard it is to spell or say Arminianism? And it's like re-epithelialization, right? So I love the group that I can share, my ophthalmology nerddom side with my Christian passion side, and they actually get it. So, speaking about ophthalmology nerd, who here has actually dreamed about ophthalmology or cataract surgery? Thank you. Good. It's not a pathology, because I have too. And practically, so we have Christian Sunday school answer, theological. What makes us different? Romans 12:2 says, "Do not be conformed to this world, but be transformed by the renewal of your mind, that by the testing of what you may discern what is the will of God and what is good and acceptable and perfect." So Romans is a very interesting book, and it starts off talking about sin. It's the Roman road. That's kind of a lot of what we base our salvation theology on. And you get this kind of, God's chosen, we're chosen vessels and all that stuff. You get kind of this predestination. Then you get to Romans 12 and there's this pivot. And it's like, okay, with all that defined, now you got to do this. You got to do these things. So, there's some sort of a transformation, and what does that look like? So I have a friend, he's the Navigator staff, Gary Bradley. I met him when I was in med school at Duke. Go Duke. We have a Kentucky fan here, but unfortunately, their rent-a-players, like our rent-a-players, will be gone. So, but I just lost my thought because I thought about basketball, which is the other thing my mind dwells on sometimes. But so is that let's go back because I really did lose my train of thought. Yeah, thanks. So there's a friend. There's a friend who, Gary Bradley, who I've been kind of taking on as a mentor. I met him when I was in med school. And when I met this guy, it was at a small group that we had. And our first conversation, he's like, yeah, I've been meditating on Genesis chapter 3 when Satan comes up to Eve and says, the fruit was good for food, appealing to the eye, and some other reason. He goes, these are, somehow I can phrase these into questions about life that I can approach a non-believer and ask them, because these are questions that we think about. I was like, how many people do you meet who think like that and talk like that? This guy's pretty cool. Who just is a guy who loves the Bible, loves people, and every time I talk to him, he's sharing with somebody. And I'm not talking about for spiritual law sharing, but getting involved with people's lives and then bringing them to the Word and leading them to the Lord and say, hey, this is what it means, to be a believer. And it is neat. So I kind of, after 15 years, I went back to do a wet lab and kind of reconnect with him. So now we kind of talk every month on the phone. And I kind of see him as a spiritual mentor. So we're kind of thinking through these issues, and this is some of the stuff I think about is, what makes me different as a Christian ophthalmologist than the guy next door who's an ophthalmologist who may not be a Christian, or may not even know if he's a Christian or not. Does it mean I hang a Bible verse on the wall? We actually don't have any Bible verses on our wall. I don't play Christian music in my waiting room on purpose. We do in the surgery center side, because those, they're sedated anyways. But, and I think it makes a difference. We're from a very Christianized part in Bakersfield. We're Central California. It's not your stereotypical LA, San Francisco, but it's a very Christian environment culture there. But, what does it look like? What makes me different? And do I have to feel pressured to be different? And he talks about, he actually has an art ministry. He started that. He started painting in his 60s. He was on faculty. He was Navigators on campus ministry at Duke. But, it's like when we do what we do, I think there's a lot of an expression of our creation of God's image. And I think there's a glory to God in doing that, instead of saying, okay, I feel like I'm doing work, then I got to do my church thing, then I got to put the two together. So why don't I do this or do this and put up a picture of Jesus or do something so I feel like I'm doing my Christian thing. And not if you have that, not to discount that at all, and I think there's value in that, but is there more to that? What is it about my life that reflects Christ that's different? Do I pray before every one of my patients? I start most of my surgery days with prayer. I don't pray with every patient. Then I kind of think, well, I don't feel like praying, or maybe I'm just praying because I'm supposed to, and it becomes mechanical and that stuff. So that kind of stuff, I kind of think about. So faith and works. James 2:17 says, so by faith itself it does not have works is dead. And I think about, and actually the rest of that passage goes on and talks about Abraham. So Abraham, we see as a model of faith. Galatians talks about him. There's a lot of reference to him. I'm reading Genesis with my daughters. One of the things is, how do we pass this on to our kids? And, life is busy, and they're at a point where, hey, they start remembering things. So what I've started doing is let me just sit down in the evening. We sit on the couch, and I remember I had enjoyed it when my dad would read to us when we were kids. So I said, let's do it with my kids. And we started reading through, Genesis, the book of the story of Joseph. So I started going through Abraham. There's some shady things in there. It's like he wasn't exactly the cleanest guy there. Yeah, it's like he's got his. So you kind of skip some portions because I don't remember exactly where you started. My wife's my sister, and he has his, Hagar and this and that, and circumcised. What does circumcised mean? Okay, so but he's seen universally as a man of faith. And David, I think, is another example that pops in my mind. Is David's a man after God's own heart. You see him almost universally praised in the New Testament. But dude, the guy was shady, had more wives than whatever, and killed people, and yet God still sees him as a man after his own heart. And I put Joseph and Daniel because Joseph is my brother's name, and you guys all know my brother, and I'm obviously Daniel. But my parents told us when we were kids, they said we named you that because Joseph and Daniel are two characters in the Bible whose sins are never mentioned. And I thought it was pretty cool. That was pretty cool. And my parents made it clear, it doesn't mean they didn't sin, they just weren't mentioned. And clearly Daniel prays for his sins. So I'm like, and I just had this thought this morning, did that put too high of a standard for me? Being a perfectionist, being an overachiever, is my goal to be perfect and not have sin. And it's like, and I think a lot of times we're taught that we're supposed to be this, we're not supposed to, so we're not supposed to sin. And if we still have that tendency, then maybe this faith thing's not working, or maybe there's something wrong with us. So, I don't know, it's when you look at these guys who obviously had a lot of sin that was pointed out in the Bible, and yet God still, praises them. So, what is it that we're striving for? Because it's not that perfection. It's not getting the board scores. It's not, getting the right evaluations, landing the job and all that stuff and doing it perfectly. It's about wanting God to be glorified, wanting God's kingdom. And I see when I talk to people, when I meet people who are believers, who are seeking, or I hear about people who are making steps in faith, I really get excited. And for me, as a measure, I'm like, the emotion that comes with this, emotion I think is not something that we can create, or we can kind of create it by exposing ourselves, but it's a real reaction and an insight into myself. So when I hear about things of faith and people interested, and it gets me excited, that means, okay, something's still right inside. And it's like, what excites me? When I get an opportunity to speak for something, or when I get to do a trial in a new IOL, or when I get to do something like, hey, that's really fun, that's exciting. So there's different areas of interest, but it's like, hey, when I hear about particularly people who I know, or maybe professionally, knowing that they're seeking the Lord, or there's people who see that really excites me. So hopefully I can be a man after God's own heart. So I guess this is just my closing slide, and hopefully we just get some dialogue going here. But those are kind of my thoughts about, as a Christian ophthalmologist, I think we have a unique opportunity. We share a lot of things in common, and that's why I think this is an awesome group, and I wanted to get plugged in. And it's great to have a bunch of folks here. And I'm not just stacking the cards in my favor by bringing my staff to. I was at an event last night, had a bunch of my staff there and cheering and taking pictures and try to cue them to clap and laugh when they're supposed to, right? So, but I think it's a great organization and a great group, and I'd like to get more involved because I almost forgot how fun it is to hang out with people when I have so many things in common. Where it's like when I hang out with other believers, I have cool things in common, but they don't understand cataract surgery. They don't understand, sometimes the business aspect of being a doctor, or even the details of lens implantation and optics and multifocals and stuff like that. And it's like fun to nerd it out. I have a couple of friends that I've known from this group that we have called Vanguard, and we totally nerd out. We have our annual meeting, and we start talking. The wives are talking, and they're like, yeah, they have their like-minded nerds they can just nerd it out, and it's fun to do that. But to also have friends who love the Lord, to have that intersection, I think is a real blessing. So I just wanted to close with the end of Psalm 139. David says, search me, O God, and know my heart. Try me and know my thoughts, and see if there be any grievous way in me, and lead me in the way everlasting. And ultimately, God, calls us, and God sent his son, Jesus, for us. And I think a lot of us struggle with truths of life and difficulties and maybe struggles we've had, and wonder why, a good God can let bad things happen to good people. And I think Gary just said it a few minutes ago. I think the question is, how can such a good God send his son to come and suffer for us broken people? And that shows how much he loved us. So if you don't know what that means, if you don't know what it means to be broken, I think Most of us do, although we may not know what it means to sin. But if we don't know what it means why Christ came and we just celebrated Easter, ask me, ask us. Because ultimately that's to be reconciled with our Savior and to want His purposes is what we're here on earth for. So, thank you.